All right, so my name's Alex Alanis. I am the presenter, and as I mentioned before, I like to share. Thank you, Victoria, for pointing that out. I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself. Today, January 26th of 2022, farming an area. It's the last time that I did this presentation was roughly about a year ago. So I figured I'd get it on the books as a recording and share this particular tactical presentation. I'm not an attorney or accountant, and as we're sitting here talking, there will be people logging in. So excuse the interruptions. Today we'll be talking about what realtors call farming an area, and I'll get into actually those definitions and what have you. There's my information. If you care to call me or email me questions or comments, feel free. I also send out an email every week with some information from Larry. He shares with us. Also the link to a show that I did some years back. If you guys are interested, the majority of those shows are real estate related, even though they're 6, 7, 8 years old. Some of them still apply to what we do today, and it has a lot of good information. So if you guys are bored and have nothing better to do, feel free to jump on. I know that I watch on my TV at home my shows on occasion when some folks, they want to know about it, what have you. So it's kind of cool to be able to watch it on TV. So if you can, please mute yourself on your end. I do definitely like a dialogue versus a monologue. If you guys care to chime in anytime, feel free. Just do me a favor after you're done. Just hit the mute button so I can continue to forward with the or move forward with the presentation. Still got people logging in here. Feel free to use the chat room anytime. I hope you guys know how to use that. Thank you guys for logging in early so we can get started on time. The majority of us have other stuff going on, and I always hate to be an interruption. So this is the reason why we like to do Wednesday evenings, usually a free night for most. And so that's the reason why we like to do them on Wednesday evenings. And as always, anyone's invited to these presentations, licensed or not, any age. I will be approaching different organizations and letting them know that, hey, there's a YouTube channel with all this information on it. If they care to want to learn about real estate and what we do as real estate agents and or a real estate professional, you know, there's a lot of other things that we do, loans, processing, escrow, they could be any of the inspection services, termite, home inspection, sewer, roof, plumbing, all that good stuff. So I don't get into that necessarily, but definitely can apply to any of those individuals if they want to learn about any of that information that is now available literally at your fingertips on the YouTube channel. Okay, guys. So thank you for joining me. So let's get started. Let's start off with the farming analogy, right? Farming is a phrase used by real estate agents and brokers, otherwise known as canvassing. And canvassing is probably just an older term that was used originally. I think, we can look at it as farming, the way a farmer plants seeds, right? Actually, that's the next sentence. I think the word farming came about with the analogy of planting seeds, right? So I got ahead of myself. I apologize. The idea of farming is that you make initial contact and return time and time again, essentially revisiting on a regular basis and not stopping the routine. Plant the seed and nurture it with regular visits and expect its growth. I don't know if some of you folks did come on to the qualities of a good manager, and we talked about that all of the things that surround us, right? Really, we have faith that those things would work. And so this is simply the analogy of farming now for us real estate agents. Questions or comments? Okay, moving on. Let's start with choose an area to farm. Probably one of the most important things to do, other than just doing it, but choose an area. A farm area would be the area in which you have chosen to canvass. A farm area is equal to the time it takes to farm it. That sentence in a nutshell is very important because, excuse me, we've talked about frequency, right? That and ritual, right? So if you're going to pick an area, try to think about how often you would be visiting that area. Now, I heard the analogy one time, and I thought it was a really good analogy, actually from David Plummer. We've talked about Dave a bunch of times, but this is the analogy that Dave came. I actually went to his house one day and we were talking, and he was telling me about his mailman. So he told me, or I asked him, well, what's going on with the mailman? And he said, well, he asked him how many houses he visits like in a week's time. And he said that while he visits about 180 homes a day. So if you think about it, in like say a 5-day work week, right? He's probably visiting close to 600 or 700 homes or more, right? Probably closer to 800 or 900 homes, right? Within the work week. But then what does he do? He goes back and he does that every single day. So he's visiting the same 180 homes every single day. That's probably not what we would want to do, but the example shows the area in which a mailman can cover within an 8-hour span, right? So we have to kind of gauge the farm area that we choose. If your farm is too big, you will not be able to visit often or with a high level of frequency. Pick a farm area in which you can visit at minimum once a month. So our farm area will probably be much larger than a mailman, right? So just something to think about. You know, there's some math that you need to do and some figuring out in terms of your target market. What you don't want to happen is you don't want to farm an area that's so large that you won't visit with any level of frequency. They have to see you often. And that's really the idea of farming, right? If you do not water the seed will die. That's the analogy. Any questions or comments? All right, moving on. So niche farm area, right? Located in an area which has many characteristics that are conducive to your needs, otherwise known as a target market, right? I call that a niche market because for the most part, the majority of us end up really finding a niche in a market, which ultimately started off as our target market, which kind of is what we discussed in the previous slide. Your target market may include residential, commercial, or industrial uses, right? It may include high density areas like apartments, high rises, or condos. And there's no reason why you couldn't market those particular high density developments. Or it may include less dense areas like horse property or vacant land. And you would notice the realtors that live out in the rural areas or suburban areas tend to have a much larger area that they market. You may want to target beach or mountain areas, which are also niche markets, right? Vacation areas may be your prospecting target. So, you know, as individuals, you know, you can really find a lot of different niche markets. And if you focus on them and farm them with a level of frequency, meaning to visit and to talk and to socialize with individuals, right? This is all part of what we do, really just to get prospects and to get business. Any questions or comments on that? So different kinds of farming mediums, right? There are many different ways to farm an area, one not necessarily better than the other. The idea is simply to make contact. And I'll say this again, you guys have probably heard me say this a bunch of times, but once you make contact, the idea is to set the appointment, not necessarily to talk about real estate, not necessarily to talk about really anything, just set the appointment. The idea is to socialize with these individuals. Eventually, you'll get um, to the real estate part of it. Eventually, you'll get to that, right? But what I call it a bedside manner. You know, I don't want the surgeon, if I'm sitting in a hospital, to just come in and say, you know, sit down and shut up, and I'm going to pull your tooth out. Let's just say it's a dentist, right? No, you know, I would appreciate a little bit more savoir-faire, if you will, a little bit more finesse in calming me down for the project here. You know, talk to me a little bit. You know, get to know me a bit. You know, that kind of thing. It makes for a better conversation, and then you can pull my tooth out, right? I know that might sound a little cliche, but at the end of the day, a little nugget, if you will. You know, we don't just jump right in and say, well, no, hey, do you want to buy a house? You know, you just don't say that. Most people would be turned off by that. Okay. Um, so in terms of making contact, there's direct mail, door knocking, which you've all heard about, EDDM, which is it's actually United Postal Service, right? Or you know, the post office service, EDDM. Every door direct marketing is the acronym, EDDM. Flyer delivery. David Plummer had a service like that for a little while. I don't know if he still is doing that or not. Email. I do email marketing. Open houses, which we should all be doing. Signs, obviously. Garage sales is a good source. If you actually make garage sale signs, you can put your logo on that, right? Obviously, the garage sale is only going to be one day, possibly a weekend. Could be a yard sale. It could be an estate sale, neighborhood parties or events, and the list goes on. I mean, again, we're simply just trying to make contact, right? So in terms of farming your area, these are all things now that you're adding to farming the area. These are the activities that you're doing when you're farming an area, right? And you can do all or a few of these, but I wouldn't do just one. I would probably do 3 or 4 of these things. It would keep you busy, believe me. And the idea is that you eventually turn the time that you're doing now marketing, and eventually it will turn into transactions to where you're spending more of your time on the transactions and less time on marketing. There should be a nice balance of those two, right? Because if you stop marketing at some point, eventually the business will drop off. Cold calling could also be a way of farming an area. Local businesses, parks, and facilities like golf courses, shopping centers, places of worship, and schools can be considered part of your farm. Absolutely. You know, maybe you've done your door knocking for the day, and you've already sent out your email, you've already done an open house, you've got signs up on your listings, and you've been to maybe some networking events, right? You could potentially hit some shopping centers. When I say places of worship, you know, churches, synagogues, and the like, right? And then schools is a big one too. I mentioned to you that, excuse me, I mentioned to you that I am probably going to approach or start approaching high schools because they do have some career days and that kind of thing, and mention the YouTube channel to them in terms of possibly having me come over and speak about real estate, and then offering them the YouTube channel. It's free. Why not? These are things, guess what, that you can also do using the same YouTube channel. You could mention my YouTube channel, and you're not necessarily taking ownership of it, but you're offering it. You know what? It's coming from you. They're gonna remember you, right? I have no problem with that, guys. Again, the reason why I share all of these things is because I would like anyone who's interested simply just to profit more from your business. It was your choice of a career. So more recently, social media has become a big part of farming an area. Make a group or join groups in your niche market. This along with personalized website and or blog. So a website, technology has gotten to the point where your information is literally just a click away. So social media, I don't know that I would get tied up too much in social media. There's a lot of companies out there that make a lot of promises. If you join their service, they'll all of a sudden, give you a bunch of leads and that kind of thing. I wouldn't spend too much time on that. I haven't had much luck with that, to be totally honest with you. And that also includes a lot of the big time companies. I won't mention any names that charge a fee and then they promise you the world, and ultimately after 6 months you spend a lot of money and get very little. That's just been my experience. Maybe some of you have had luck with that. I certainly haven't. But in terms of a personalized website, there are websites now that CRMLS has that are really good. They have IDX feeds, which allows clients to now get onto your website and search for property. And that's huge. Okay. If anybody wants to know about that, I have that information. Okay. But CRMLS, the MLS that you belong to, they have a website that literally you pay monthly, and they have I don't know, 20 different platforms that you can pick from. And so you personalize it yourself. And when you open it up, it's your website. All you need is a domain, I think, right? Which I even think they help you design. So chamber events and networking in the area you have chosen will give you quick exposure. And that was my go-to when I was heavy in doing sales. I certainly got a lot of the information that you see on this slide from networking, just by meeting all the different people. I did EDDM, I did flyer delivery. Actually, that's from David Plummer. I learned how to do the email through networking, and so on and so forth. Also some social media platforms that I had with the Real Estate Rant, as well as with AGR and Associates when I was in sales. So any questions or comments on that? All right, moving right along. Tips to help your marketing work. So, so to make an impact, focus on the strongest selling points and benefits and be concise. So what I mean by that is if you're going to send out, let's say you're going to put a flyer together, right? Try and think of what the strongest selling points are in a niche market. Okay, if you're in a mountain area, your strongest selling points might be local fishing, local ski resorts, that kind of thing. You just want to be concise. In other words, if you put too much on a marketing piece, some, if not most, and some of you might have experienced this, will find that because it's so much, you don't even bother to start reading it. You just pretty much throw it in the trash, right? That's been my experience. Be concise. Use large wording, large fonts. But in terms of your selling point, you want to be you use your strongest ones, right? So strong call to action, right? The more specific you are, the better. Call to action is we've all seen them, like call now. This offer is only good for the next week. If you call now, you get a free gift. And don't get me wrong, none of those are very good for real estate, but we've all heard them, right? So you just have to be creative. Think about your style, think about your individualism in terms of your imagination, and you'll plug something in, right? Make the reader have to act now. That's the real strong call to action is if they pick up the phone, and if it's just a phone call, remember, set the appointment. Choose your words carefully. Buying or selling a home is an emotional transaction. Don't be afraid to appeal to the buyer's or seller's emotions. Give them an offer they can't refuse. Make your offer even more inviting with the promise of good, honest service. And that's probably going to be closer to the bottom of your advertisement, as something that has to be said. we have good, honest service, but you're going to start off with, your call to action, right? Proof it. Nothing turns a reader off more than grammatical errors. Have someone else look at it. Very important. I've seen way too many real estate advertisements with grammatical errors, and then I see some with pictures of the realtor that are just terrible. And I'm not saying that they're bad looking people, because the majority of them are not. They're good looking people, but the photo that they took was just not good. And so you need to think about that too. Not only grammatical errors, but the photography. Be innovative. Try something new and make your material stand out from the others. And some of us have seen some of these materials. There's a gentleman out there, I can't remember his name. He puts a dog rider on his signs, and he probably gets a big response on that, but it's creative, right? It's innovative. So it's something to think about, where, when you guys put together your marketing pieces for your farming, right? To be innovative and try to step out of the box. There's a lot of ways to do that, right? Put yourself out there. Marketing your piece one time will not work. Advertise frequently and consistency. And this goes back to the whole farming analogy, right? You can't just water a seed one time and expect it to grow. You have to water frequently and consistently. Very important. Frequency and consistency. That's the key. Consistency is the key. If you think that you're going to be a real estate agent and you're going to do one advertisement and you're going to get business, you're probably in the wrong business, because I don't know of any business that does that. Some of the bigger businesses, like even like the phone carriers that you all use, we always see their commercials. Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, Metro, right? We even see some of the newer ones, right? But we see them frequently and consistently all over the place. So guess what? We all belong to one of those services. So Jose has a question. Hi. How about I'll sell your home for $199 commission? Is that even true? Now, are you talking about $1.99? Or I'm not sure. 1.99%. Okay, percent. Okay, so yeah, so it's just under 2%, right? It can be calculated 1.99%, right? 2% is kind of the norm. Now, I'm assuming, Jose, that somebody, or you've probably seen that somewhere. Somebody else was offering that. There's a lot of different creative ways that people are starting to do commissions, and it's mainly because the prices of homes have really gone high. I remember back in the day. I mean, wow. My parents bought a home in '74, if I remember correctly. Or no, I'm sorry, they sold a home in '74 here in Whittier. It's actually over there by Pioneer High School, $25,000. And at that time, that's what they were going for, right? 1974. Obviously, 2% would be very little money. You would see more of a 6%, maybe even an 8% commissions. But right now, the median price range is probably closer to 750,000. So when you say 4%, that's still a lot of money. Yeah. So what I wanted to mention was, and Jose's thinking that it's kind of a hook, and I think it is. So I think that the part that they're probably not saying is that that's just one side, meaning that it's 2% one side. Now, I hear an advertisement daily because I listen to talk radio every single day. That's just my, I don't know, I'm addicted, I think you would say. And I noticed there's a commercial that comes on, and I don't remember the name of the company, but what they say is they don't charge commissions. Their agents are on salary, meaning that if you call them to sell your home, they'll only charge you one price. It doesn't matter the price of the home. which is interesting because if you think about it, it's kind of how it should be, right? But real estate agents, because what we're accustomed to is those percentages. We take advantage of that, where we say, oh, wow, we got a good hit, I sold one for 1.4, but I'm still going to charge my 4%, right? Are they doing anything different than what they normally would do? They take the listing, they put it on MLS, they take some photos, they do the Avid, they hire a transaction coordinator to do their disclosures. It's all the same stuff. If it's a $300,000 home or if it's a $2 million home, what's the difference in the commissions? Well, some of the listing agents would say, well, I'm doing a lot more work because I have to really market this house, right? That may be true, a little bit. I don't know, to the tune of $20,000, where they spend $300 on a guy going out and taking photos, professional shots of the home. Maybe they stage it, right, for I don't know, let's say $1,000 or $1,500. Should they charge an additional 25, 30 grand because of those things? I would say no. But people, as long as they're willing to do that, I can't argue with them, right? Is that something that I would do? Probably not. Me personally, I just try to be fair. That's just me, okay? That doesn't mean that you guys should be fair, or maybe that's just the wrong word, right? Maybe fair is the wrong word. I just have an ethic where if I see that my fee is too much, then I might reduce it, right? Where some of you may not have that ethic, but it's not wrong or right. It's just you. So I'm not saying that if you do that, that you're wrong. No, if your client is willing to pay it, then hey, more power to you, right? I personally just have a problem sleeping at night, knowing that I'm charging somebody something that I really didn't earn. That's just upbringing, I think you would say. Maybe that's my curse, right? But at the end of the day, that is our option. But to answer Jose's question, the 2% or 1.99%, okay, probably falls under the category is, and this is what I always find funny, is the large print giveth, the small print taketh away, right? There's probably some small print in there somewhere when you talk to those individuals that, oh, it's not just 2%, that's just one side, or yeah, it's 2%, but the buyer has to pay his agent's commissions, or it's only 2% if it's dual agency, right? So that, like Jose is probably assuming here or speculating that it's a hook. Yeah, it probably is, right? So I hope that answers your question. Any questions or comments on the marketing pieces? Yeah, there's always, and here's the thing, guys. I hate to say it, but what are we talking about here? We're talking about marketing pieces. They're all a hook or a catch. We talked about a strong call to action. It's all that. It's not that it's wrong. It just happens to be their call to action. It happens to be, something that they're throwing out there. So I'm actually asking you guys to do the same thing. So you might not like doing some of the things when they're talking about flat fees, or they're talking about reduced commissions, or they're talking about salaries. You may not like any of that. That is your prerogative. See, that's the nice thing about real estate. You're the CEO of your company, and you get to do whatever you want. See, that's the nice thing about it. But what I'm asking you to do is to do something. Don't do nothing, because if you do nothing, you get nothing, right? So that said, a lot of us look at, kind of like what Jose was, we're using a derogatory term. It's a hook or it's a catch. We're using those derogatory terms. It's just advertising. And some folks, yeah, they throw you a curveball, right? They throw you a curveball in terms of trying to get you to call them, right? So what I'm saying is that there's really nothing wrong with that. you still have the opportunity to say no. So I think Julieta has a question.
Yeah, my question was how because you were talking about marketing materials, and I noticed that when I've seen most real estate marketing materials, the some of it's not very cohesive. You know, it's kind of um
All over the place.
yeah, all over the place. Yeah, it's all over the place. So do you find that, because I mean I found in marketing most of the time, when you have these big you know big brands, like for
Yeah.
example Progressive or Target, they have, it's all cohesive. Now in real estate, do you find that that is something that really impacts um, your ability to be able to for people to be able to be, you know to
To
you know
have to have
for
credibility.
for your marketing materials to be you know success, you know, your marketing to be successful, cohesiveness, how does that does, I mean, does that even, does that affect, you know, your marketing materials in the real estate world?
Yeah, I would say absolutely, right? And
Mhm.
you're actually bringing up a big point, because I think the word you were looking for was credibility. When your competition is out there and they have grammatical errors, their pictures and all that great, like you said, their marketing isn't that cohesive.
Mhm.
Most people are going to throw us in that same bowl, if you will, right? And they say, "Oh, well,
Mhm.
you're a realtor. You're kind of dumb, right? You're
Mhm.
just a used car salesman." You know, there's a stigma that goes along with being
Mhm.
a real estate agent when you're dealing with that stuff.
Mhm.
But you have the opportunity, right? Because you've
Mhm.
recognized that, you have the opportunity not to do that. Look at your marketing materials and make them cohesive. We can hire people to do that. You mentioned some of the bigger companies. I think you said Target, right? Ooh, I think she accidentally hung up, so she'll probably be right back. I think she mentioned Target. Uh, you know, those companies, they hire big marketing firms to make sure that they're cohesive, right? So yeah, I think that what she was hitting on is important, you know. Um, I didn't mention, you know, the negative stuff about your marketing stuff here, because what I'm focusing on is the positive stuff and actually the things that we should be doing. But she makes a good point. So any other questions or comments on that? All right, so let's move along. She'll probably log back on right now. I think she accidentally logged off. Let's do a quick funny. So my teachers used to say, no one is ever going to pay you to stare out a window. You sure got that wrong, right? So I thought that was kind of funny. And this one, man, this was really good. Uh, how do you make $1 million at farming? Start with 2 million and work hard. Meaning that you're going to lose some before you gain, right? And it's kind of funny. He's got his wife uh, as a counterweight, so the tractor doesn't fall over. That's kind of funny. But anyway, um, that said, let's move on to, we're actually on slide 9. We're at 638, so we're doing actually pretty good. Ways to dominate a farm area, right? So pick an area. We talked about that earlier, right? Pick an area. Identifying and focusing on the homeowners most likely to move. Predictive marketing. So now there are companies out there that do predictive marketing. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there has been some companies that I bought into years ago that do predictive marketing. And what does that mean? Well, predictive marketing means, and actually, it goes, it talks about it there on A. This means both buyers and sellers, for sale by owners, expired listings, divorces, probate, property in bad condition, homes owned for long periods of time are all indicators of possible change, which in essence is predictive marketing, right? There are people out there that this is what they do all day long. And so what they're doing is they're finding the potential sellers or leads, whether it be buyers or sellers, in predictive marketing. Being creative and giving homeowners what they really want. What they want is value. Your knowledge is an area expresses that value, meaning that, you know, if you have your niche market and you don't know anything, then let's just say the niche market is the mountain areas, but you don't know much about it, your value just dropped as a real estate agent. You have to increase your value to understand the eccentricities of your niche market. Know the school districts, know the events, know the venues, know even the shopping centers and the stores, and know all of those things that will increase your value in that area. So when you are socializing, and I mentioned that earlier, right? You're able to set the appointment. People are actually excited to talk to you because they want to know more about an area. And I talked a little bit ahead of myself here. So study your areas, prices, shopping, freeway access, schools, parks, places of worship, etc. What they want is more. Show them how to get more through repair, replace, and beautify. So these are areas now as real estate agents that we're just giving our opinion. It's not necessarily an expert opinion because we're not experts in anything, but we are giving our opinion, and we just make it known, right? We make it known. Hey, this is my opinion, right? If you repair this, you might get a little bit more value out of it. So we use those terms, might, appears, maybe, you know, you have to use those terms because, again, we're not experts in these things, and our opinions are certainly not expert, right? And then in terms of beautifying, obviously, that goes without saying. But if you work on understanding your niche market that you're farming, right? It expresses the value of your service. Establish personal contact while not being annoying, right? Excuse me, without being annoying. Use body language tips and dress appropriately. Always keep a safe distance, but not too far. You will know what is comfortable. Now, right now, because of COVID, right, we're all pretty much staying away from each other. A lot of people don't shake hands. A lot of people, you know, they elbow bump, right? I don't know what any of that does really, because the coronavirus is an aerosol that will even go through your mask. And so, you know, it really does, none of that really matters. What matters is the comfort zone of the person that you're talking to. So recognize their comfort zone and respect it, right? Always keep a safe distance. So learn positive movements in speech, right? Positive movements, you know, smile on your face, right? Learn words that are a little different than what we're used to using. Sometimes I'm trying to think of some words that I use. Oh, there she is. I'm trying to think of some words that I use, but some of you will probably see this in my emails, right? I'll say, if you would be so kind, as opposed to could you, right? Would you be so kind? And so on and so forth. I think you get my idea, right? Always keep a positive attitude. So that is what we've talked about in previous presentations. You know, we don't speak negatively of our industry, right? Because when you're farming an area, this is what ultimately the residual effect is that you will start talking to people. And actually, that's your goal. Your goal is to start talking to individuals. And eventually, when you set the appointment, and eventually, as you're getting into those conversations, the tree will eventually drop the fruit. And I've used that analogy before. When you're shaking the tree will eventually drop the fruit because the fruit is ripe. It's an analogy that I like to use, right? Oh, yeah, no, I noticed that. So I hope you didn't miss anything, but just so you know, Julieta, I am recording the session, so you're welcome to go back on and watch it again if you missed anything. But I just want to let you know that your question was a good one, or your comment, because You know, realtors have a stigma, and we're kind of like used car salesmen, and you definitely need have the opportunity to better your own marketing and make it cohesive. So yeah, you can recognize that everyone else's marketing is very cohesive. So just make yours better. You know, that will make you, or it will help you stand out in your farming area, right? So any questions or comments on that slide? All right, so let's keep moving here. So ways to dominate a farm area, continue, right? So following up on time, every time. So actually, if you say, and I probably write this, but I get excited about this stuff because you know when I make these presentations, you know most of this stuff's off the top of my head, but I do some research, right? But if you say that you're going to uh, come back at some time, you know, don't not come back. You have to come back because you just lost value and credibility if you don't come back. So follow up on time every time. Mean what you say, do what you mean. Don't say it if you're not going to do it. Follow up is key. There's no business without it. And when I mean that, I'm not just talking about real estate. This applies to anything, anything. Unless, of course, it's heroin. The heroin addict is coming to you, right? As a matter of fact, most heroin drug dealers don't put up a sign, but that's probably the only business that uh, doesn't follow these rules. Everything else follows these rules, right? And I use that as an analogy. Understand that, you know, certainly I'm not promoting drug use, but at the end of the day, it's the other end of the spectrum, right? We have to focus and realize the side of the spectrum that we're on, and that is consistency. And you'll hear me say that a lot. Utilizing top strategies for your listing presentation, offer free market analysis to any property. So just so you guys know, if you have MLS, if you go to your CRM on your MLS, I'm sorry, and there I go again, I'm getting ahead of myself. It actually says it on B there. MLS CMA system offers many reports and statistics at your fingertips. That's what I wanted to say, because I was on the system not too long ago, and there are a couple of things that you have at your fingertips, some of them which are free with your paid service. One of them is a link that you can put on like your Facebook, on your emails. If you guys do email marketing or anything like that, it's a link, okay? And that link, what it does is somebody could put their address in there and their email address, and they'll get a report from the system on how much their property's worth. So anybody want to know how to do that? Contact me and I'll let you know, okay? But other than that, there are CMA reports that if you simply just plug in an address, the report will generate within the system. You just have to put a couple of things in there, but it actually personalizes it to you because it's your system. It'll have your picture in there. If you put your picture, it'll have other information about you, your license number, all that good stuff. And it's a really nice report. But these are CMAs that you have at your fingertips that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to put together. But imagine now, and we've had this conversation before, okay? I see real estate agents, they come in, you know, 10:30, 11, they make a few phone calls, maybe an email, they go to lunch, they come back, make a few more phone calls, maybe an email or two, and then they're gone by like 2:30, 3 o'clock. You know, to me, that's not a full work day. The reason why that's all they're doing is because they're not really looking at all the other things that they have at their fingertips. If I were to tell you all the things that you have at your fingertips, you would be working 10 hours a day easily. And the reason why is because there's a lot of setup. And literally, in order to get these things delivered out, you have to farm an area, right? You have to have those contacts. Once you have those contacts, then you're emailing those things out, and you're communicating, or possibly you're meeting your client with the report in hand at Starbucks. But the idea is that you're working, instead of working a 3-4 hour day with a 2-hour martini lunch, right? You're working 8 or 10 hours because you got all this stuff to do. There's not enough time in the day to be an agent. So if you find yourself with nothing to do, right, that you really need to start looking at all of the resources that you have at your fingertips. And it's really on MLS. MLS has a lot of stuff. You see this emoji right here on the screen, the lady with the realtor cape? That is an emoji that you guys can put on your phone, and you can literally use that emoji when you're talking to clients. That's why I put it on there. I wanted to show you guys. But these are resources that you all have at your fingertips. Being a real estate agent is a full-time job. It is a full-time job. And if you're not doing it full-time, you're really not tapping into the resources that you have at your fingertips. So brand yourself in your area. And we talked about this in a previous slide a little bit, but mailers, advertising materials, handouts, and signs. These are all things, signs specifically, that really is more time consuming than anything else, because it really doesn't cost a lot of money. But I see signs up all the time of different real estate agents, and they're not necessarily open house signs. They're just advertising signs, which is perfectly legal. The only thing that I see a lot of the cities ordinances is that you can't leave the signs up overnight. And then there's certain days that you can't put your signs up. I think Friday, I don't know if it's Friday. I don't know, here in Whittier, there's certain days, I think Thursday or Friday, you can't put signs up, something like that. But the rest of the week, you can put signs up anywhere, as long as they're not obstructing anything or potentially causing a safety hazard. But at the end of the day, the only other ordinance that there is that you can't leave them up overnight. Now, the city ordinances might have changed, because I haven't done that in a while. So look into it. But that's something you could do. Spend an hour putting up 10, 15 signs around the city with your information on them, and potentially a writer with your website. You want people to visit these things. Again, you want them to call you. You want to make that initial contact. And you have to do that with a certain level of frequency. If people see your sign up once a week, twice a week for 6 months, believe me, at some point, they're going to think, wow, that person's busy. And you may not have even closed the deal. But what's going through their mind? What's going through their mind is you're busy. That's all they need to know. Right? So going back to kind of Julieta's point, okay? And I hope I'm saying your name right. You probably go by Julie, I'm thinking, right? But I do. Go ahead.
That's fine. That's perfect.
Julieta.
Julieta.
Yeah, and I love your name. Don't get me wrong, but because I haven't said it before, right? But to your point, right? That's that consistency that you're kind of looking for, right? That cohesiveness, right? It adds credibility now to you, and it adds value to you. I mean, think about it. If you saw a realtor sign up and you drove by it every single day for a year, you would think that person is really busy, right? And again, they may have closed 2 deals in the year. It doesn't matter. What matters is the perception that you're giving your audience. And that's where it's most important. So this goes along with what I said here in number 7 about branding yourself, right? That's simply just branding. Go ahead, Mr. Jose.
Hey, Alex, I don't know what you think about this, but I know some people that work in teams of 4 or 5 or 5. And whenever either of those agents gets a listing, they always put that one realtor, always. It doesn't matter if it's somebody else's listing. So that face gets familiar with the, maybe with the city. And I'm assuming that when they go for an interview, they can also say, look, I sold 10 houses in a month. But in reality, it's the other agent's listings, but they choose one face for all the listings. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And again, this is, you guys were talking about marketing gimmicks earlier, right? A hook or a catch, right? That happens to be one of them. And guess what? There are MLS rules concerning teams. If you're on a team, you need to represent yourself as a team. So if you find a group that is doing that and they're not representing themselves as a team, they're in violation. I would look more into that if that's the case. But again, it's a gimmick, right? Where they're putting their best foot forward. You know, they probably have an agent that's been in the business 20 years, and they're using that person as their front man, right? Where everyone else is kind of working in the background. You know, MLS and NAR, the National Association of Realtors, has recognized that, and I think they view it as an unfair advantage. And I think for most of us, it angers agents, you know, where, you know, hey, if you're by yourself and you don't have the resources of 4 or 5 persons on a team, just because you're not interested in that, there is an unfair advantage to those who are marketing and doing, you know, the work of one agent as 5 people, and it allows them to do a bunch of transactions. It's an unfair advantage. So whether or not it's legal or illegal, I don't know. I'm not an attorney or accountant, but I can say that there are rules on teams. So if you're interested on that, look it up. Take a look at what the rules are on teams. Interesting reading some of that stuff, I'll be honest with you. But it's a good point in terms of branding. You know, I'll be honest with you. Real estate is in most offices is kind of a cutthroat business. Most of the teams that I've seen put together don't stay together very long because everybody on the team wants to be the pinnacle, right? That's what I've usually seen. I can't say that I've always seen that, but I've usually seen that where one person will take off and they'll create their own team, or another person will go off on their own and just do their own thing, right? They don't usually stay together for very long. And it's because, you know, they think that some of the things that they're doing might be trade secrets, or some of the things that they're doing, you know, they try to keep to themselves, you know, and that's the reason why they're getting business. And so they take that information and they go do it themselves somewhere else. They mimic that information. So, so take a look at the whole team concept. It's interesting. So let's see, Robert Sully, most cities take them and fine you to get them back. Okay, yeah, and you're talking about the signage, right? And this is what I mentioned to you about leaving them up overnight. So look at the city ordinances. If you are going to put signs up, look at the city ordinances before you do that. Because yes, you can and will get fined. Sometimes you'll get phone calls up front, but after the phone call, they don't bother to do that. They just fine you in order for you to get your signs and your A-frames back, right? It's just something to think about. Any other questions or comments on that slide? So here's some tips on effective messaging. So get to the purpose of the visit, right? So earlier we talked about just being personable. So definitely you want to be personable, right? You need a bedside manner, right? And kind of like with that picture there on the right illustrates, you know, this is how somebody would view you if you come at them with simply just, hey, you want to sell your house, right? That's kind of the feeling that one would get, right? Put contact information up front quickly, right? And usually this is done to identify yourself. You know, you're a stranger to some people. You will be, or to most people you will be at some point. You're a stranger, so you want to make sure you identify yourself to put that level of ease into your conversation, right? Don't repeat what the person already knows. And a lot of us do this because, well, we kind of fall short in having some conversational piece, right? So have something in mind, preferably 3 or 4 different things in mind that you're going to talk about that the other person doesn't already know, because that's when the conversation turns boring, right? Get to know the person's who's getting the message. So a lot of times, you know, we're visiting people in their places of work, or we're talking to them possibly on break or whatever the case is. You know, again, this has to do with your bedside manner, and it has to do with your ability to set the appointment. In order to do that, you have to start with just being personable, make reference to something apparently nice about the property. This is if you're door knocking, right? You point out something nice. So you're making positive comments about their property, right? Avoid trying to use numerous topics. So you don't want to go on talking about 20 different things within a conversation. You want to kind of hold the topics to more than one conversation. So, hey, can we meet up tomorrow? Can we meet up next week? And we can talk about other things on top of what we've already talked about. It gives you the ability to have more material to talk about. Consider changing your greeting with each new contact. And the reason why I said that was because you get into the practice of using different greetings, it becomes a little bit more natural, and people perceive that. If you approach them, they will perceive that the way that you're approaching them is natural. You're not just a canned statement. We walk up to the register, will this be all for you? Find everything okay? And then, the thing that I always crack up at now, when you walk into a store, the people that are there, sometimes greeters, right? They'll say, welcome, right? That's happening more and more often. And then you'll hear, have a good one, right? Those to me are just really cliche. I would stay away from those comments or greetings, if you will. Try to use different ones that make you look a little bit more professional, make you look a little bit more, what's the word, educated, right? A little bit more, I don't know what the word is, but I think you guys get the gist there. Any questions or comments on that slide? All right, so let's continue on. Offer specific dates and times as to repeat visits or listings in the area. So I mentioned, if you're going to say that you're going to come back, make sure that you come back. Don't flake on that, right? And then also, we have access to listings in the area, and that's something you should offer to anybody that's even remotely interested in talking to you about listing their property. They might say maybe. Well, that's your opportunity to say, well, hey, can I come back next week? I'll show you some listings that are in the area. So you're not committing yet, and you're not forcing them to sign a listing agreement. Hey, I just want to show you some information. It gets you back in the door, and that's what you want. You want to be able to talk to those individuals. Use humor and offbeat comments with caution. This is like really important because I've been approached by some salespeople just think they're all that and a bag of chips and a bologna sandwich. And, it's easy to offend people really quick with offbeat humor, right? Avoid comments about people, right? I know we've talked about this before. Weak minds talk about others, right? Moderate minds talk about themselves, and then strong minds talk about ideas. So put yourself in the strong mind category, okay, and talk about ideas. Don't talk about other people. Focus on real estate, right? This is one of the things that we still should be sparing about, but if we have a lot of knowledge about different things that's going on, it will increase our value. Keep joking and kidding to a minimum. And that's because most people want to know that if you are going to list their property and or sell them a piece of property, that you mean business. And if you're always just kidding around, they may get that gist that you're not really serious about what you're doing, especially for them. Always write down the information that you spoke about and revisit it with them, okay? So if you're talking to 20 people a week, sometimes it's difficult to remember everything that was said. So if you take notes about what you guys talked about, and you happen to remember that conversation through your notes, and you repeat it again, it increases your value in terms of being professional with these individuals. Hey, oh wow, he remembered what we talked about a week ago. And you know, because when they don't see you for a week, well, obviously you're doing other things and talking to other people, and having the ability to remember that, you know, it's a strong point. It gives you value. That makes sense? And then, like I always say, get the appointment, get an appointment to come back and consult the person about their wants and needs, even if it's not to buy, sell, or repair. Offer other services, loans, notary, credit repair. Even if you don't do it, even if you don't do it, offer other services, attorney, paralegal. I've talked about this before. If you know other professionals in your industry and you happen to say, oh, hey, you know what? I know a paralegal that can help you with that situation. If they're telling you, well, I'm not really interested in selling, but I do have some legal problems that I need a paralegal to do. And you happen to know anybody? As a matter of fact, I do. Can we, why don't we meet up at her office? Here's the address. Why don't we meet up at this time? Okay, perfect. You meet them there. You walk into a paralegal's office with a client for them, right? And expect literally nothing in return, right? Other than walking back to that paralegal after, you know, the client is gone and telling them, hey, have I earned your business? Potentially, you can get listings and or buyers from those offices by simply helping them out. We've talked about that before, right? So any questions or comments on that slide? So marketing tools. So there are many marketing tools to aid in doing marketing. Public record can give you homeowner information and maps. Your local title rep can provide phone numbers and even walking apps. I don't know if any of you have seen those for your phone to also aid when door knocking. Some affiliates and vendors at times will co-brand certain media with you. This will help reduce the cost of those materials and create a relationship with local professionals. One of them that I'm familiar with is called Realist. It's free, but if you co-brand with, say, a lender or you know, another service, those companies will pay so their information shows up on your flyer, so to speak, right? And then you can get those flyers, which literally cost you nothing, and get out there and solicit, get out there and farm. But there are those kinds of services, okay? Creating a sample listing presentation available for email or review. So if you're talking to somebody and you don't have their particular presentation together, but you have a sample one that you can show them, that also potentially can get you in the door. Does that make sense? Creating a sample video that can be seen on social media or on the fly. You have a text message that you can send out to people, you know, oh, hey, I have a video here if you'd like to see it, and I can just text it to you real quick. Technology allows us to do that now. Business cards, water, and mints are a must when out in the field. So obviously business cards, everybody asks for them. Hey, can I get your number? Sure, here's my number, here's my information. When I say water and mints, obviously when you're talking to folks, the more you talk, the more our breath becomes a bit exuberant. So I would always recommend having mints and you know, wet your whistle when you're talking. Sometimes, you know, makes your throat coarse, and water is a quick cure. Any questions or comments on that? All right, so moving right along. We're on slide 14 and we're at 7:09, so we're doing good on time. Oh, actually, we're on final thoughts. Okay, so I'll read this and then we'll open up for questions. Okay, one must think in terms of segments. If you look at the market as a whole, it will be too overwhelming to imagine any real effective marketing. Don't try and conquer the world. Pick up an area and effectively plant, nurture, and farm the area with your presence, and smile as frequently as possible. Folks will get to know you. 74% of anyone who buys or sells property do it with someone they are acquainted with. There are many tools and areas at our disposal, some which have no competition. Learn what they are and aggressively show your presence. It will eventually grow into a viable and lucrative crop. And I use that analogy because, you know, in real estate, we call it farming. So if we use the analogy of seeds, plants, and crops, it kind of means the same thing. But the most important part is the part where I'm talking about 74% of anyone who buys or sells property do with someone they are acquainted with. So when I say acquainted with, you know, if you've talked to somebody 3 or 4 times in the past 3 or 4 months, the probability of you getting their business has increased probably 4 or 5-fold versus, oh, I have a cousin in San Diego that could sell my property for me, right? When they haven't talked to that cousin in 3 years. So it becomes your job to show up there with a smile, you know, where they're happy to see you, and you have information for them. You potentially have taken them and acquainted them with some of your services that are not related to real estate. You potentially had a few cups of coffee with them, and the conversations weren't even about real estate. But at the end of the day, you have gained an acquaintance to, if and when they are ready to buy or sell, that they're going to call you because they already have your information. They already know what you're doing. They already know what you're up to. You visit them a bunch of times. Your value, you've increased through the different methods that we talked about here today. And they're convinced that you're probably the best man for the job. So guess what you've just done? You've done the job. And it's through consistency. It's through setting the appointment. So a lot of things that we're talking about here is not rocket science. You know, you don't have to go to school for 7 years and you know get A's and B's and pass all your tests to get through this. You can literally do this tomorrow, even if you're not licensed. And I'm not saying to do real estate without a license. What I'm suggesting is that you don't necessarily need a license to do what I'm talking about here. Now, to get a deal, yeah, you need a license and you need to be able to facilitate the transaction, right? So, okay, so we have a question. What do you think about finding a common interest to talk about with prospects? If you see a house with Star Wars decorations and starting a conversation, if you are a Star Wars fan, absolutely. You know, this is something in common, especially if you're excited about it, okay, where you're not being insulting, obviously, to the person that you're talking to, because, you know, you don't want to call somebody a Trekkie, right? Even though, hey, when I was growing up, I watched Star Trek all the time. And I'm talking about the original one with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, right? And those gentlemen. And I know there's a lot of new ones that are out. But when you call somebody a Trekkie, you know, sometimes it can be offensive. So you just have to be careful with that. It goes along with what I was talking about earlier about trying to keep joking to a minimum, right? So it's what I call an icebreaker, okay? You're breaking the ice in order to have a conversation about other things. You know, you start off with points of interest. And it definitely could be something that you can start a conversation with. But you definitely want to identify yourself. You definitely want to let them know what you're doing. Hey, you know, I'm out here farming the area. You know, you can be concise. It doesn't have to be highly detailed, right? But once you've done that, once you've broken the ice, once you've already started the conversation, see what you can do about setting an appointment. Hey, can I come by and bring you some information? Hey, would you like to grab a cup of coffee sometime? Maybe you and your wife can come and we can talk more about, you know, things that you might be interested in the future. So yeah, absolutely. I would definitely use it as an icebreaker. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Dion.
Hey, Alex.
Hey,
Quick question for you. So obviously, I've heard it where, obviously you've got different personality types and things of that nature.
Of course.
Would you, be flexible in your approach, depending on, your client's personality style? And if so, what's the best way to do that?
All right. So, we've talked about this a little bit in some of the other presentations. Okay. I certainly do not want a bunch of clonies of me, right? That's not the purpose of me showing you this stuff. What you need to tap into is your individualism, okay? Be an individual. You're going to come across different ethnicities, different cultures, male, female, different ways of life, right? We have to approach those things with an open mind. Absolutely have to with an open mind. Those things are actually unrelated to what we're doing. So if you focus a little bit on what it is that you're doing, all those other things are really kind of off to the side, but those things sometimes could be icebreakers because we all have different cultures, but there are some similarities in our cultures, right? So those happen to be the strong points of those things, right? So you can kind of lift those things up in praise, if you will, or honor, or just in terms of self-respect. But those are the things that now that create value in what it is that you're doing. So I think that is what you were asking me. Because I'll be honest with you, it's difficult to answer that question without having a subject matter, right? It's like, in other words, I need an example. But if I can think in my mind, some of the clients that I've had in the past, I've had clients from Africa. And when I'm talking about Africa, I'm talking about a country called Eritrea that used to be part of Ethiopia, okay? And I've sold that community, matter of fact, because they're kind of a tight-knit community here in Southern California, right? And they trust me vigilantly, because every single time that I worked with one of those people in, it's actually a church that they all go to, they all say, oh, you need to go to Alex. And let me tell you, their English isn't that good. So it did take a little bit of work in terms of being able to communicate, but I got my message across. And they understood that I had absolutely not a prejudice, a bone in my body, okay? That they could confide in me in pretty much anything, and I was there to help. And I've sold that community easily 7 properties or maybe more. And I'm still talking to those individuals. They're friends of mine. I mean, I've seen some of their kids' soccer games. I've seen them at stores, it's always high, they don't ignore me by any means, but I think that's what you're talking about. I've had clients from China, right? I've had clients from Bangladesh, and all different cultures and ideas and income levels, right? So you have to approach those things in terms of what it is that you're doing. You're facilitating their needs. So if you simply look at those situations and simply try to better their situation, doesn't matter where they're from, what their culture is, what their religion is, what their ethnicity is, or the color of their skin, which to me is just really irrelevant, right? If you simply try to help those people, that's all that matters. You have accomplished your goal. And guess what? The goal in this case is simply to get the referrals. That's what you want. You want their referrals. You want to be able to open their next transaction and know that they're going to say, oh yeah, hey, I want to go use Dion again because Dion, man, he helped me exuberantly. And with a smile on his face, he wanted to do it. If people think that about you, man, imagine you're like Superman. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? All right, so let's move on here. I do have a couple of other quick things to talk about. So I talked about the YouTube channel. You know, I record all of these sessions, and I'm putting them on the YouTube channel. If you guys would be so kind as to subscribe, if you're interested in viewing any of those presentations, I believe there are 24 or 25 presentations currently up, and then obviously this will be the next one. And I put one up every week, and I know somebody just logged off, but and I don't remember who it was, but just so you guys know, I won't be here next Wednesday, okay? Because I have a meeting for my daughter's soccer team, just happens to be Wednesday night. So next Wednesday, there will not be a meeting. I will send out an email saying that, just to remind you guys, but I will not be sending out a text reminder, okay? So just an email. So watch out for those emails, but we'll start up again quickly. I believe it will be in February. I believe it's the 9th, if I remember correctly, but the following Wednesday we'll start up again, okay? This is the YouTube channel link. The link is included at the bottom of the email that I send out every week. I'm assuming that all of you guys have access to that link. If for whatever reason you don't, just shoot me an email and I'll shoot it over to you. Obviously, you can't click on the screen here to get to it, but if you take a picture of it, I guess that would be one way. But do me a favor, and if you guys are watching those presentations, and subscribe, okay? Because I'll get credit if you guys subscribe. The channel will get credit, okay? So I do appreciate that. That said, let's move on to affiliates and resources. Obviously, there's my information. We usually see Mr. Larry here. He hasn't missed too many of them, I'll be honest with you, in the past year and a half. But there's his information. He is with Old Republic Title, and very good resource of information if you guys should want or need anything on that realm. Mr. David Plummer has his classes on Saturdays. Motivational speaker and real estate trainer. I do endorse his product. Very good speaker, and I'll tell you, you listen to him talk for a good half hour, 45 minutes, and I know some of the folks that come in and listen to my presentations, they can attest to that, because he pretty much makes you walk out the door running like, oh my God, I'm gonna go get some business, right? That's how he is. That's the effect that he has on you, right? So Mr. Dave, love him to death. He definitely has a good message. ERA's Mortgage with Elizabeth Montes. If you guys should need any pre-approvals or anything like that, she's at your fingertips there, phone number, email address, and then obviously Property ID. I do endorse Property ID. They have insurance, and they have very good reports. So there's Shamim's information if you should want or need information on NHD reports, okay? So anyway, that said, we are coming up at 7:23. And I passed the slide there. We are at the end of the presentation, so thank you guys for coming on. I'm not an attorney or an accountant, but I do like to share the information with you guys, and hopefully you guys took away a nugget or two in order for you guys to get out there and make some money, right? Of course, remember me if you happen to need a transaction coordinator. I am always here to service that part of a file. I do consider myself an expert in real estate, although I don't have any credentials other than just wisdom and time. Like I mentioned, I'll be in the business next month, 33 years. I always laugh when people say, well, I've been in the business 20 years. And I don't know what that means exactly. Like, should that mean that you should know everything? And I would say no. So I only say that with a grain of salt, okay? I learn something every single day, and I don't purport to know everything. But I do know a lot about the contracts, and I have a pretty good understanding on how they work. So if you guys have a problem or you should have a question, consider me as a resource to answer those questions. And I'm here to help as always. So, you know, when you guys are out there farming and talking to people, know that you have a resource to fall back on, right? You have my phone number and what have you. So other than that, if you guys want to unmute, you guys have anything you're working on or you want to talk about anything? Mr. Dion, did you have another question?
I was gonna ask, because so next week, no contract class, but we're looking to resume again the Wednesday after that. So that would be on the 9th of February.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe it's the 9th. Yeah, next week I won't be available. So no class next week, but the following week. And like I said, I'll send out a reminder that there's no class for next week by email. All right, guys. So other than that,
Okay,
we actually
perfect.
did good on, yeah, we actually did good on time today, 7:25. And like I said, I hope you guys took something away today. If anything, know that this is recorded. If you need to reference it again, you know, to give you guys some ideas about what you can do to better your business. And just know that I don't do a lot of these technical trainings. I'm sorry, tactical trainings. Most of my stuff is technical, but I do some of these tactical stuff because I have them. I don't plan on doing any new tactical stuff, but there is a good handful of them that I have done, and some of them are already on the YouTube channel. Okay, I will be working on the new RPA and have already read through it 3 times. I'm hoping you guys have done the same. You guys should be reading it. If you expect your clients to sign it, you should know it so you can help explain, not necessarily be experts in it or know it verbatim, but at least know what it says, right? Because in order to play chess, you have to know what the chess pieces do. And so that's what's really important. I use that analogy, okay? I'll be working on that. I'm hoping to have that up by the middle of this year. It is 16 pages, even though the majority of it actually is not much different than the contract that we had before December of 2021. There are some additions to it, and there's a lot of new explanation, but for the most part, the terms and conditions aren't that much different. So I'm hoping that you guys are reading it and understanding it. Any questions? You know, you can call me. I'm always a resource. Okay. It's not a bother. I actually enjoy helping others, as you can see, and sharing. So with that, I'm going to sign off, guys, unless there's other questions or comments. Okay, so that said, I'll see you guys in a couple weeks, and hopefully you guys are subscribing to the YouTube channel. Did you have another question, Dion?
Nope, just jumping on to say
Okay.
thank you for your time and great presentation as always.
Okay, thank you, sir, Mr. Dion. Good to see you again. And all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation. Thank you guys for coming, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. Okay.
All right, thanks, Alex.